God is dead, God remains dead, and we have killed him. Nietzsche wrote this at the end of the 19th century, but perhaps this is the most current phrase of our time. And before you think this is just a religious provocation, listen until the end. Nietzsche was not celebrating the death of God. It was not an attack on faith, but a brutal diagnosis of the collapse of the certainties that sustained the human soul for centuries. When he said that God was dead, he was talking about the end of all meaning that came from outside, the end of absolute morality, of guaranteed purpose, of eternal truth. The death of God represents the ruin of everything that gave structure to our existence. And that is precisely what you feel today, even if you cannot name it. You look around and everything seems to be in place. There is food in the fridge, people around you, maybe a job, maybe a plan. But inside you, something is not right. You feel that hole, that sensation of being outside your own body, a disconnection from life, as if everything is happening, but you are not really there, and no one sees it. You yourself try not to see it. But at night, when the noise stops, it appears. The question, the damn question that you try to drown out with music, social media, series, work, or even cheap spirituality. But it comes back. It always comes back. What is the meaning of all this? You are not alone. And more importantly, you are not wrong for feeling this way. The truth is that we live in a world where the ancient gods have died, but we have not yet created anything to take their place. We grew up hearing that we should study, work, build a family, be good citizens, but at some point, this narrative that seemed to make sense begins to unravel. You start to realize that what was promised to you does not fulfill. You followed the script, and still, you are empty. That's where Nietzsche comes in. He was one of the few who had the courage to face this emptiness head-on, without anesthesia, without illusions, without toxic positivity. He understood that the death of God was not the end, but the beginning of a new challenge. The challenge of living without ready-made truths, of facing the world without crutches, of building real meaning, or being swallowed by nihilism. And if you are here, watching this video, it's because at some level you feel this too. Maybe you have tried to convince yourself that everything is fine. Maybe you have pretended for others. But inside, you know, something is broken. And I tell you, this is not the end. It can be the beginning, but only if you have the courage to continue. In this video, I will show you exactly what Nietzsche meant by this phrase, and more importantly, what you can do with this brutal truth. Because after God dies, what remains is you, and you better be ready for that. Have you ever noticed how modern life seems tailor-made to avoid silence? Everything is noise. Everything is speed. Your day starts with notifications and ends with distractions. You wake up with a to-do list and fall asleep with a sense of tiredness that is not just physical. It's existential. And in the midst of this flow, everyone pretends that everything is fine. But it's not. The promise of progress was clear. If we have more comfort, more technology, more freedom, we will be happier. But now that we have all of this, why do we feel so empty? Why, even with all the achievements of civilization, do rates of depression and anxiety keep skyrocketing? Why do we feel this nameless pain, this fatigue that doesn't go away with sleep, this restlessness that no achievement can calm? It's because the modern world has created an illusion, the illusion that we are in control, the illusion that simply going with the flow will lead us to meaning. Choose a profession, be productive, succeed, post about it. But what no one says is that this script we blindly follow was built on pillars that have already crumbled. The morality that guided us has lost its center. The religion that promised salvation has become just another product. And even science, our new deity, no longer offers purpose, only explanations. Nietzsche saw this before everyone else. He predicted that by killing God, we didn't just kill an idea. We killed the structure that supported everything we were. And the problem is not that we live without faith. The problem is that we continue to act as if there was still an absolute truth behind everything, while deep down we know there isn't. We live in the midst of a contradiction. We are free to do anything, but we have lost the why of anything. You feel this when you finish an important project and think, what now? You feel it when you are surrounded by people, yet still feel alone. You feel it when you achieve what you always wanted and realize that nothing has changed inside. This is the emptiness of a world where the old gods have died and the new ones have not yet been born. The tragedy is that, for most, this feeling is not confronted, it is anesthetized. We buy, travel, eat, post, talk about gratitude and positivity, but all of this is a desperate attempt to fill a hole that keeps growing. Because what is missing is not motivation. What is missing is meaning. A meaning that does not come from outside, that is not imposed, that is not in a self-help book, but that is created by you, from your own darkness. And it is precisely here that Nietzsche's phrase becomes more relevant than ever. Do you really understand what he meant by God is dead? Because many people repeat this phrase as a catchphrase, but almost no one comprehends its devastating depth. In the next part, we will do what few have the courage to do, truly dive into the brutal, transformative, and dangerous meaning of this phrase. Because only when you understand what Nietzsche meant, will you realize the size of the abyss that has opened up inside you, and what can be born from that abyss. If this content is making sense to you, click the subscribe button and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for your support. This is not just a provocative statement, it is a death sentence. And Nietzsche knew exactly the weight it carried. He was not celebrating the death of God as one toasts to victory in a battle. He was lamenting, denouncing, warning. Because the death of God, for Nietzsche, meant the collapse of everything that humanity believed to be eternal. But what exactly did he mean by that? To begin with, understand that God, here, is not just the Christian God. Nietzsche is talking about any absolute system of values, any metaphysical structure that offers definitive answers about good, evil, the purpose of life, the origin of existence, the fate of the soul. God is the idea that there is a fixed point outside of time that gives us meaning. And over the centuries, Western civilization has been built upon this idea. Right and wrong were not opinions, they were divine laws. The meaning of life was not a question, it was a dogma. There was a path, there was a judge, there was a destiny. But all of this began to crumble. Science advanced, revolutions broke sacred monarchies, morality began to be seen as a human construct. History revealed the absurdity of so many wars fought in the name of eternal truths. And thus, without realizing it, humanity was extinguishing the candles of the altar. And one day, the temple became dark, not because someone entered and destroyed everything, but because no one believed in what was there anymore. God is dead is the recognition that we no longer live as if there were an absolute truth guiding our choices. It is the end of metaphysical innocence. Life no longer comes with a divine manual. And the problem with that? It is that, even without believing anymore, we continue to search for meaning as if it was still there. Nietzsche calls this nihilism. The moment we realize that all our highest values have lost their value, and there is nothing to put in their place. There is no new God. There is no new manual. Just the abyss. But the most disturbing point is this. We have killed him. We killed God. It was not an accident. It was us, with our skepticism, our quest for autonomy, our refusal to accept ready-made truths. It was us who who tore up the old maps, and now we are lost in a dark sea, trying to pretend that we still know the direction. And Nietzsche knew this would leave us on the brink of collapse. That is why, in the parable of the madman, the one who announces the death of God enters a public square and shouts to everyone that they have not realized what they have done. He says, "Have we not yet heard the noise of the gravediggers burying God?" He understands that the death of God is a spiritual earthquake, and that most people have not even begun to feel its consequences. And you? Have you felt it? Have you felt that the values you were taught no longer serve you? Have you realized that the idea of happiness you pursue is not really yours? Have you ever had the feeling that you are building your life on quicksand? If so, then you are already living within Nietzsche's prophecy. But what happens when this emptiness finally catches up with you? When the loss of meaning turns into silent despair? When you realize that nothing is sacred anymore? In the next part, we will face the monster head-on, nihilism, and understand how it destroys everything or prepares you to be reborn. Have you ever felt that nothing really matters? That everything you do, waking up, working, smiling, completing tasks, pursuing goals, is being done out of inertia, as if your life were a script already written by someone who doesn't care about the ending? This is not fatigue, it's not laziness, this is nihilism. And Nietzsche not only predicted it, he lived it. He described it with the precision of someone who plunged into the abyss and returned to tell what he saw. Nihilism occurs when all the values that supported your worldview crumble. When the ideas of good, evil, success, failure, right and wrong reveal themselves to be arbitrary. When you understand that the universe has no secret plan for your life, that there is no hidden logic ensuring that everything will make sense in the end, and worse, that perhaps it never existed. This is the moment when the human soul stands naked, without faith, without purpose, without ground. Nietzsche called this passive nihilism, the collapse of vital energy, the state of mind in which the individual gives up seeking, gives up creating. He settles into the absurd, lives out of obligation, consumes to fill holes that never close. Everything seems tasteless, colorless, meaningless. He is content to survive and disguises this despair with routine, distractions, and irony. The typical phrase of the passive nihilist is, "Nothing really matters." But this is not clarity. It is cowardice, because nihilism is not the end. It is a stage, a process, a crossing. The problem is that most people stop halfway. Nietzsche believed that nihilism was a necessary symptom of the evolution of consciousness. But he warned, if you are not strong enough to cross it, it will consume you. And how it consumes. It disguises itself as indifference, but inside it is pure despair. It acts as if it is fine, but feels an emptiness that tears at the chest at night. It laughs, but feels no pleasure. It talks about freedom, but is paralyzed. Because when everything loses meaning, even freedom becomes a burden. Nihilism is the desert of the soul, and many get lost forever in this place. But Nietzsche did not want you to die in that desert. He wanted you to cross it, to burn everything that was not yours, and discover what remains standing after the destruction. Nihilism, according to him, can be the pain of the birth of a new way of being. If you have the courage not to anesthetize yourself, not to retreat, not to seek shelter in ready-made false promises of meaning, you can emerge from nihilism stronger, clearer, and freer than ever. But there is a price, and that price is suffering. The raw pain of facing the truth, the loneliness of having no answers, the anguish of having to build meaning with your own hands. And Nietzsche knew this. He lived it. In The Gay Science, He describes this pain as a kind of violent purification, necessary for the spirit to become deeper, sharper. The pain that tears you from the surface and forces you to dive. And that is exactly what we will talk about in the next part. Because the suffering you are trying to avoid may actually be the master that will show you who you really are, and perhaps the only real chance of rebirth.